Have you ever built a really solid core of 4 to 5 Pokemon, but you're struggling to fill that last slot? Or have you ever wondered why every team seems to be running the same few Pokemon next to a different core? Well, today we're going to be talking about the concept of the glue Pokemon and kind of exploring just really what the top 10, best glue Pokemon in my opinion are for the early Regulation F. Now, I guess basically to expand on what a glue Pokemon is, a glue Pokemon is essentially a mon that is very, very slappable, right? This is a mon that you can kind of put on almost any team and it's going to get good results, right? Now, obviously there are some Pokemon, for example, like Urshifu that are incredibly good, but I do not necessarily think Urshifu is a glue Pokemon, even though it is a top, 3 to 5 mon in terms of usage stats, right? But what is a glue mon, right? Well, essentially, I'm going to use the best example, basically to kick us off, and that is Incineroar. Essentially, what Incineroar does, right, is it is a mod that kind of fills out, it fills a slot in that Firewater Grass core, which a lot of people love, just because of how good it is in terms of just synergizing with each other. Not to mention, this is a mod that has Intimidate, this is a mod that has Fake Out support, this is a mod that has Parting Shot support, it also has a pretty strong, Stabbing Flare Blitz, right? And it just in general, Incineroar is just a really slappable mod that can kind of fit on any team, right? So I'm going to quickly run through, I guess, the sets I would use for Incineroar, and then we'll kind of just talk about really the rest of the other, I guess, top 10 glue mods in my opinion, right? So as we said, Incin is a mod that is essentially just, it is arguably the best support in the game, right? This is a mod that's fantastic. Again, Fake Out support, Parting Shot support, Knock Off for items, Flare Blitz for a lot of damage, has Intimidate support, can run things like Safety Goggles if your team is like kind of weak to a Mongus. Also has options like, Citrus Berry as well, which I do think is probably a little bit better right now. I think, again, I've said it before in previous videos, if you're playing on the ladder, go Citrus. If you're planning to play tournaments, go Goggles, because I think in tournaments you're going to run into a lot better, a lot more Monguses, plus they're also going to be better played than they are, in general on the ladder. Also too, I guess I'll quickly throw this in here. I actually did do a video the other day talking about some of the, the top cores in the metagame right now, at least for the early meta. And there were Pokemon, for example, like our next guy, which is a Mongus, that didn't really make it onto any, many teams, but I still think a Mongus is without a doubt one of the, the top, 3 to 5 mons probably, in terms of like how it can impact the game. And essentially that is because it is a glue mon in my opinion, rather more so than I guess just a mon that is the core is built around, right? You'll have this core of, for example, like Urshi, Tornadus, Landorus Eye, and then something like a Mongus is just a fantastic slappable one on a team like that. But anyway, just running out the Incin here, look, I have talked a lot about Incin, on the channel recently, so I'm not going to go too far, in detail on these sets, right? Basically, I'm kind of just hitting some bump points here, or break points, I should say, sorry, really. 200, HP is basically just efficiency here on the Citrus Berry. The, 36 EVs here going into the Adamant Edge allows us just to hit that attack bump. For anyone who, I guess, doesn't know what a bump is, see how we're 154 here. If I lower that by 1, we go down to 152. If I lower again, we go by 151. So basically, if you hit that bump, which is basically any stat that just ends in a 0, you will actually get 1 extra point because you've hit that bump. I think that's something cool to keep in mind. This HP stat plus this, Speed Def stat really just allows you to live things like Specs Moonblast, pretty comfortably. And then of course, just kind of pumping into the defense. If you want on a set like this as well, you could run it a bit faster. I have gone as fast as like 186, up to 86. Essentially, it just comes down to you, right? This one doesn't need that much speed. It's really just for fake out wars against other Incineroars. Now, of course, we did just touch on our number 2 guy here, and that is a Mongus, right? I just typed in Shroom. That's what I get for calling it Shroom all the time, I guess. Where Incin is obviously an Intimidate mon with Fake Out support, this is a very bulky Regenerator mon with Spore and Pollen Puff. I said Spore and Pollen Puff. I also meant to say Rage Powder as well, which is arguably like kind of the best move this one has, right? So essentially you have this guaranteed sleep. You're also incredibly slow, which means you'll always get it off, which means the opponent will sleep for at least 1 more extra turn. Rage Powder is just fantastic for redirecting attacks. Pollen Puff is great for healing up your allies, right? This mon is essentially just the jack of all trades, right? If you need health back, you can, regenerate her out. You can also slap something like a Citrus Berry on it here as well. Citrus Berry plus Regenerator all of a sudden does get you 66% of your HP back. And it's pretty damn scary, I'm not gonna lie. Other options as well this guy can run though. Sometimes they'll run like Mental Herb. I do think Rocky Helmet is probably the other best item. Unless of course you're gonna go for something like a Wiki Berry, Figgy Berry, all that kind of stuff, right? The 33% berries. I personally am a huge fan of Rocky Helmet just because it really kind of allows you to, I guess, beat just opposing Urshifu, which I do think is also really good when paired with something like, Incineroar, the guy we just touched on, because obviously, if you have your Incineroar on the board, chances are they're probably going to Surging Strike you or Close Combat you. Amogus can switch in, take them both. It's fantastic and, into one of the best meta mons, not to mention Sleep's broken, Rage Powder's broken, Pollen Puff is also very, very good. Last move here, this can be whatever you want. Clear Smog is a very solid option. You can also run Leaf Storm as well for things like picking up, our good friend Incineroar, but Protect is also just a very, very solid set, right? In terms of this, I like to go 220. It just, helps out with the Regenerator, right? Regenerator, I think, off memory, I think it's like 119's... I think 220 is a Citrus Berry. I probably should have, it's been a while since I've cut this. Citrus Berry is like the 220 here. Basically, it helps you just get extra HP back on that. In terms of the defenses though, this is really just down to you. I like to run mine super bulky, 236 bold nature, just because I feel like a lot of the threats that are going to damage it are physical attackers, and most of the special attackers that are going to hit you anyway are probably going to, kill you in 2 shots. And then I guess the final thing to keep in mind with the Mongus is a lot of people tend to run this down to about 28 speed. The main reason for running 28 is so you underspeed things like, sorry, I think it's 27 speed, I think, is to underspeed things like Ursaluna, both Ursaluna forms in Trick Room, also Iron Hands as well, because I believe if you have a look here, we'll just check Ursaluna first. Ursaluna with a Brace, Nature, 0 speed, will hit a staggering, I believe it's 49, right? Yeah, it hits 49, so you want to hit that 48 mark, which is why obviously we've gone for the 27 there. And I believe Iron Hands is also the same, is it not? Iron Hands is also 50 base speed, so yeah. Basically, this allows you to underspeed them by 1 point under Trick Room, which I do think is very, very important. Because again, this one just kind of wants to sleep things. And if your opponent gets up Trick Room, you really want to be able to make sure you kind of put them to sleep. Now, moving on from the support options here, we're going to talk about Floodman. Now, this is an interesting one, right? Because Floodman does not offer the same support of something like Incineroar or Mongus. But what it does offer you is, without a doubt, one of the best special attackers in the format, right? This one hits incredibly damn hard. It's incredibly quick too. And then on the special end, it can also eat, quite a few hits, right? Now, there is a bunch of different ways to play this. I personally am a huge fan of using this mod for speed control, pairing up with things like Chiyu, but also the choice spec set is also very, very impressive, right? If you're running something like choice specs here, I'll just run through the sets real quick. You go for like Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, and then your last move really can be a lot of things. It's like some people run Thunderbolt, others will run Power Gem. I'm a huge fan of even Icy Wind on the spec set, just because again, especially with things like Landorus running around, Icy Wind is always just like fantastic. In terms of the spreads here, 68, 116 is very, very basic. This allows you to live things like Adamant Shen Power with Ice Spinner. I like to also just run it up to the bump here and then kind of just dump the rest in speed, right? This is a very, very, very basic Floodman set, right? This is just what I would say is very, very standard. A lot of players these days do run things like 36 and then like run it even slower, go to like 74, and then they dump like a shit ton. I think it was like something like this off memory. Nah, it's not quite that much. I think it was, I want to say that's the spread. I forget exactly what it's for. Actually, no, I think it was this. Yeah, it was that one there. They go 74. I forget exactly what that defensive calc's for, but obviously it allows you to live things like, opposing Floodman Shadow Balls and whatnot, which is definitely, very, very good. And then I'll quickly touch on the booster energy set as well. You can run, if you want to go like booster special attack, you can go that same set we were looking at before. Personally though, when I run booster, I do like to go booster speed, and especially right now, I do run it up to about that 194 mark, basically because Iron Boulder can hit 193, and I don't want to ever get caught off guard by that thing having like booster speed and then just like one-shotting my Floodman when I want to one-shot theirs, which obviously is something, it won't happen that often, but definitely something worth to keep in mind, and they kind of just dump the rest in there, and I drop Shadow Ball for Protect. Main reason for that is I'm just a huge fan of no Shadow Ball. I think Shadow Ball's cool, but for the most part, Moonblast will basically hit anything you want it to hit. So if you want single target, Moonblast is almost always better. In terms of Terras, I think Terra Fairy is without a doubt the best Terra. This mod just hits so hard as it is, even with like, this much investment without, a modest nature or anything, you still hit really freaking hard, especially when you pair it with things like Chiyu, even Fake Tears Whimsicott as well. And then of course, if you want some other options, Terra Stella is not bad on like a special attack boosting set, I think. Grass and like water are also pretty good defensively, but as I said, we're just going to stick with Fairy. I think it's the best. In terms of mon this guy wants to play with, very similar to like the last two, I guess. You can kind of slap him anywhere, right? You can put him in with like, the Urshi, Rilla, Incin cores. You can put it on like Tornadus, Lando, Urshi cores. Honestly, there's like no core Floodman doesn't fit on. This mon is just, you need a special attacker, you slap this mon on, it is your special attacker. It does a lot of damn work. Now, kind of just piggybacking off one thing we said there, it was Tornadus. Tornadus is an interesting mon because like normally this is the kind of mon you would like build a core around. Obviously, I think most people know Tornadus is one of the best mons in the format, right? It has Tailwind, it has, Bleakwind Storm, which is fantastic, obviously. It has access to things like Taunt, as well as, for things like Rain Dance. And this is a mod where for most people, honestly, just kind of build the core around this. But I have seen a lot of times where people will have these cores of like pretty, offensive teams. But the issue with them is they kind of just lose to like Tornadus teams, right? And because of that, Tornadus is just a great last mod to slap on these teams, right? Things like, Covet Cloak and, Mental Herb as well are really good, but I'm a huge fan personally of just like bulky Tornadus, right? Like if you're running, why is it not letting me do that? There we go. If you're running like bulky Tornadus with like Rain Dance, I do think like Steel plus Helmet is like really, really good. And basically from there, the gist of it is you kind of just run up to the bump, you max out your HP. and then you kind of just like dump into the rest, right? If you like really wanted, there are people who go for things like this for you know, weather wars as well with tornadoes, which is definitely something you can keep in mind. But I'm just a huge fan of just going like bold. I also don't like playing weather wars. I just go like that because I find it to be a little bit more consistent. Allows you to be a little bit faster, hit a little bit harder. If you really wanted, you could do this to like speed creep the you know, no speed ogre pawns. Because there are people that, so I shouldn't say no speed, but no speed investment. A lot of the time, like water ogre pawns will put like 1 point in to be like 132. But yeah, Tornadus is just like probably the best speed control that you can slap onto a team as well. If you're not running like, you know, a rain dance team, Icy Wind is also like a really good option as well. But yeah, this one is like honestly really sick. It also has things like Sunny Day as well. Just, it's a fantastic one where if you need like speed control, weather support, you know, maybe just like a good taunt mon, Tornadus can fill that slot really well. Moving on though to a new speed control mon, and that is Latias. Now, this is a really cool mon, right? This is a mon that has kind of come into the format as a, you know, an answer to one of the best mons in the game, which is Urshifu, right? And again, it kind of feels weird making Latios, you know, the focal point of a team, because really like what it offers you is like a good Rocky Helmet mon, right? You know, it's got Levitate, and go for things like Terra Poison. And then like in terms of moves, like it's got Tailwind, right? It's got Recover. Kind of just allows it to stick around, get your speed control. You know, it's pretty bulky on the special end as it is. You know, good speed, good special attack, and then just allows you to go for things like Ice Beam and, you know, like Mist, right? Mist Ball. Mist Ball is like really cool as well, because if you catch things like Floodman on switches, there's a 50% chance you just kind of drop their special attack by 1 stat, which I do think is like really solid. Also too gives you like a 2-shot into a Mongus as well. In terms of EVs on this mon, I like to just go like max here. I always just go even numbers. I don't know why. I feel like there was a reason I used to do it back in the day, but I just prefer even numbers. In terms of this, you probably just want to go up to like, probably not that much, honestly. I think it's 130 because off memory, you want 60 in the special attack stat. I think that's to like 2-shot Amoonguses after Citrus Berry, I believe, if they're running like similar sets to the one I showed before. In terms of speed, again, you kind of just want to like speed creep this like 132 tier. This is a really interesting speed tier because again, this is where a lot of things like, you know, like 4 EV, you know, Ogre Pawns will hit. So people kind of creep around there. So for me, I'll just go like there, and then maybe, yeah, something like that I think is fine. Then we'll just go bold nature. Actually, you know what? Yeah, that's right. I go 12 and then there, yeah. Because I like having your defensive stats be closer together is like always nice. But then of course also like, you know, just I like even numbers. Even numbers just they please me. But yeah, Latias, I think this is just a fantastic switch into Urshifu's, right? This is one that can tank Urshifu pretty well and then give it Rocky Helmet chip. It can also again stick around. It's got recovery. Like this one having recover is like really good. Tailwind support obviously is really nice, and then Ice Beam plus, you know, Mist Ball. It's just good. This one is like really nice. It just gives you like answers to Urshifu and some other, you know, common physical attackers, which is always really solid. And again, Ice Beam plus Mist Ball is just fantastic coverage. Now, the next one here we're going to touch on is King Gambit. Now, this is one, again, that can kind of be built around many cores, right? But I do think what King Gambit does best is it kind of deters people from bringing their Incineroars, right? If you know, if Incineroar is the best guy in the format, this guy kind of deters it. He says, hey, I'm going to go for like some Terra, like Terra Fairy, and I'm just going to ignore your Incineroar, and I don't kind of care really what it does, right? In terms of items, you know, it goes for things like Dread Plate, right? Obviously Defiant, you know, if they intimidate you, you basically get +1 attack. I'm a big fan of just going like Kowtow Cleave plus Sucker Punch with Swords Dance and Protect. Mainly the reason you want to go for Protect is obviously, you know, things like Incineroar is going to fake you out, which is kind of annoying. And obviously, you know, it is nice having a Steel type move sometimes, but it does feel like, you know, there are either situations where you get to Kowtow Cleave because the board state's pretty free, or you're in a situation where you kind of have to just click Sucker Punches. And, you know, getting up an SD is always really good, right? If you can kind of like maybe lead your own fake out mon, outspeed their fake out mon, you know, fake them out and then just get up an SD, all of a sudden this mon can be put in an absolutely fantastic position. Other sets as well are things like Assault Vest. I do think AV is really good, but I much prefer having Protect personally. Terra Dark is also like a really solid option as well if you just want to kind of pump out damage. SD plus, you know, like double Dark Stab with Terra Dark is also like a really good option. In terms of EVs here, I like just going to the bump, maxing out my HP here. And then really at this point, it kind of just depends on how you want to play it, right? Doesn't really need that much defensive investment. So I like going for something like 12. And then it really just comes down to the speed tier, yeah? Like 1 point in speed is fine, but if you kind of want to speed creep other Gambits, maybe go like, you know, 2-3 points here. You could even go 4 if you really want to do it. But being 50 speed, there isn't anything too crazy you need to really outspeed. Like maybe Iron Hands, but for the most part, Iron Hands are probably just going to outspeed you anyway because they tend to run a bit more. They'll run around that 76 mark, and at that point, you're already losing the matchup, so there's no point really in doing it in my opinion. But yeah, look, this one here, it is just really good at deterring Intimidate. I think that's what it does best. Things like Landorus, right? You know, at +1, you'll just one-shot Landorus with a Terra Dark Dread Plate with Sucker Punch. Obviously, Incineroar, it's a mon that you don't necessarily want to take on the instant itself, but it's like it can't parting shot you. As long as you've got Protect, it can't just freely fake you out. And then you can kind of just ignore it and just really hunt its partner down, which I do think is really, really solid. Now, speaking of I guess a second redirection one here, and that is Ogon Water. Now, this one is obviously fantastic, right? I feel like we've touched on it a lot, like things like Urshifu, right? This is one of the best switch-ins because it can just eat this, you know, the Surging Strikes pretty freely. Especially if it's like Choice Scarf and you already know they're locked into Surging Strikes. Ogon Water is just obviously a very, very free switch, right? Not to mention, you know, even as a support mon, this one puts out a lot of damage with things like Ivy Cudgel. I do think Horn Leech is also like really, really solid. And if you pair this up with obviously things like, you know, for example, Rillaboom, obviously, you know, things like Grassy Gliders, whatnot are obviously options. But look, this is also a follow me mon as well. That's a grass type, you know, which is really good because it allows you to redirect things like a Mongus Spore. And the Spiky Shield is just a better version of, you know, Protect. So that also is very, very good. This one's pretty simple, right? It's just a support that can pump out a lot of damage, but it's also just very, very, you know, I don't want to say it's very, very bulky, but it has the option to just basically tank what it needs to, be very annoying. Horn Leech is fantastic for getting recovery as well. In terms of EVs on this mon, I just like going 76, maxing out my HP. Honestly, 1 point in speed's enough. If you really want to start creeping other ones, I think 136 is honestly a fine tier. Spadef, you don't need that much. I think you kind of just dump into Fizz Def and kind of call it a day. Again, if you want, you can go something like this, maybe bump that up to like 120 and then kind of just invest the rest there. I do think that is also really, really solid. Adamant Nature is definitely the best in my opinion, because even though you are a support, you still pump out a lot of damage with essentially what is a base 120 move with no drawback and a high crit. The reason it's basically 120 is, for those who don't know, the mask gives you basically a 1.2 times power attack, boost to your attack moves. So yeah, that makes, you know, this all of a sudden becomes even stronger, which is definitely really, really good. Now, the next one I'm going to touch on here is kind of Raging Bolt. Now, this one, I'm still torn on whether or not I actually want to consider this a Gloomon. But the reason I'm going to have this here is because a lot of, you know, teams are kind of, I don't want to say a weak to the best team in the format, but really the best team in the format, in my opinion, is still probably Tornadus plus Urshifu, right? Rain Dance plus Surging Strike is a pretty bonkers combo. And this is the one with, you know, Thunderbolt plus Thunderclap. Can really put a lot of pressure on those two mons and really just allow you to kind of pick them both up, right? In terms of items, you know, I've tested a lot of things. I think Booster is probably the best. I do think like Lefties plus Calm Mind also is like a decent option. Outside of that, you know, maybe things like Safety Goggles and Assault Vest are also really good. Choice Specs if you want, but I don't think I would suggest that. But I do think, you know, something like this here is like probably your go-to, right? They're like your 4 best moves. If you want, you can slap a Draco Meteor on this, but I think if you're going like Booster and in particular Calm Mind, Dragon Pulse is just better. And then you would probably just drop T-Bolt here for something like Protect. If you want to, you can actually just go like no Protect as long as you have enough support. I'm kind of really just saying I'm going to Calm Mind up and then just going to sit there and kind of nuke the board, which I do think is very, very solid, right? In terms of the, you know, the terrors here, I think Electric is actually its best terror, just because it kind of allows you to put on a lot more pressure with Thunderclap, especially if you get Calm Mind and have that that booster energy sitting there. In terms of the rest of the stuff, really, there's a couple different options. Fairy's really good for the mirror matchup because chances are they're never going to go for the electric move into you anyway because you 4x resist it. So, you know, Fairy kind of covers for that dragon weakness you already have. Terra Grass is also really solid for things like a Mongus, of course, you know, just dodging spores. Not to mention as well, you're already weak to ground, so patching that up obviously is pretty damn nice. In terms of other terrors, I don't really know if there's anything else I would suggest. I do think if you're not going to go electric, probably go grass, and if you don't want either, fairies probably is just the way to go, right? But I guess in terms of EVs as well, EVs on this mod, like it's so bulky, it hits so damn hard. Honestly, like 180 is like probably, it might be overkill, but also it's like pretty solid. I think if you've got good speed control, like if you've got Tailwind, I think 112 is the way to go. If that's even with Icy Wind as well, 112 is probably the way to go. If you're not running speed control, I think something like this is honestly fine. I like going up to about 120 here, and then you kind of just like dump like that. I like going for something like this because I think having more Fizz Def than Spadef is good. Like this one already loses to things like Floodman, so like what's the point in going too crazy on this? Especially too if you're pairing it up with things like, you know, Calm Mind, for example. Honestly, even something like that's probably better, let's be honest. Because yeah, if you've got like, you know, all this into the defense stat here, then you get a Calm Mind up, buffing up the Spadef stat, it'll put you in a really good spot. But as I said too, I think if you're going to go for like a bit speedier, say like that 112 mark here, that is also fine. You just have a little bit in defense. Probably just want to make sure you pair that up with an Intimidate mon as well, though. But yeah, this one absolutely slaps, pumps out a lot of damage. You could even, you know, if you want, go 187. and then kind of like put more investment into the defense. Honestly, it's up to you. There's a lot of different options. This one's really cool. It's really good into, like, as I said, one of the best cores in the format. Not to mention, it's a mon that just doesn't need a core built around it, right? As long as you've got decent support, like, you know, fake out support, intimidate, you know, redirection, like, this mon doesn't have to be the, you know, the main one in the core, but as a 5th, 6th slot, I think it is very, very solid. Now, I guess to round out, you know, we got 2 mons left here. One of them is Rillaboom. I feel like this one was probably pretty damn obvious. I do think the best Rillaboom set is Assault Vest. There are other options. I think Citrus lefties are both pretty decent. As well, the Miracle Seed set is also pretty nice. Grassy Surge giving the Grassy Terrain is also pretty damn busted. You've got 2 fantastic stabs in, you know, Grassy Glide and Wood Hammer, right? These are just 2 really, really strong stab moves. Having Grassy Glide being a priority move, that's buffed up obviously by the terrain, is fantastic. But really, this mon's main thing here is Fake Out. I do think these are your 3 best moves that should almost always be on every set. Really, the last ones here come down to like U-turn and high horsepower. Basically, U-turn allows you to obviously pivot around. It's really good when you pair it up with things like, you know, Incineroar. Having like double fake out, intimidate with double pivoting is like fantastic. And then of course, high horsepower is also just a really damn solid option for hitting things, you know, like ground types that, you know, sometimes your teams can be kind of weak to, right? Also, alternatively, you could drop one of the grass stabs here. I've seen people drop Wood Hammer for, you know, U-turn. I've also seen Grassy Glide be dropped for it. It really is just much of a muchness. Depends how you want to play it. In terms of Terras, Terra Fire, in my opinion, is the way to go. There are other options like Terra Water, but really Terra Fire is just the best, right? You're already a ground type, a grass type, so you're probably not catching any, you know, ground moves or water moves. And Fire is just fantastic. You know, you can't get burned, especially by things like, you know, gouging Fire, for example, is a great example. In terms of EVs, I'm very simple with my EV spreads here. I like going for something like this. And then I think it's like run that up to 100, run that to 114, and then pump the rest in defense. Essentially, going 192 is just like optimal for grassy terrain regen. Having the attack, you know, up as high as it is allows you to one-shot things like Blood Moon Ursaluna, if they're only running like 4 HP, max HP for defense. And then too, like just having the defense here is nice. Like defense and Spadef are solid. This basically just hits 100, giving you like a nice round number for that assault vest. And then of course, you know, hitting that speed tier of like, I'm faster than, you know, those people creeping around that 107 to 110 speed tier range. And the Fizz Def Dump is just a Fizz Def Dump, right? The meta is very physical, allows you to eat things like close combat and, you know, Surgy Strikes a little bit better. And then the final mon we're going to touch on here is Brian Hands, right? Now, Brian Hands is a mon that has kind of dropped off a little bit in Regulation F, but I think that's kind of just new toy syndrome. I also think in Regulation, I think if it was D or E, Iron Hands also kind of dropped off, and then people realized pretty quickly, hey, this is still a top 3 mon in the format. I do think the Assault Vest set is probably slightly worse now. I still think it's like pretty solid. Like, I think you're either going Assault Vest, you're going Clear Amulet, or even to potentially Booster Energy. Booster Energy is like the other one I think is definitely on the rise right now. In terms of Terras, I think it's the same as always. Grass and Water are your 2 best friends. Maybe Terra Fire as well is also really, really solid. But I personally like Water. If you're going like Booster, maybe Fire is better. But this mon, it basically gives you fake out support, right? Also gives you, you know, strong, like, I shouldn't say strong stabs, but decent stabs in like, you know, Wild Charge, Thunder Punch. I think these 2 in particular are really good with Swords Dance sets. And you're only really ever going to run the Swords Dance set on the Clear Amulet, right? So if you're going something like this, and then you would run like Protect your enemy slot, right? So if you're going Clear Amulet, just go like these 2 here. They're your no drawback stab moves. You've got SD, you've got Detect, fantastic. On a set like this, you're probably just running like 76 Adamant, right? Because you're kind of relying on the fact that you got the Clear Amulet buffing you up. You're in no Assault Vest, so you're just going to run something like this, yeah? Pretty damn simple, not gonna lie. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing fancy. That is just a very, very standard, you know, Clear Amulet set in my opinion. If you're going Assault Vest, obviously you don't have, you know, the beauty of running these extra moves here. So you're going for things like Wild Charge, right? You're going for things like Heavy Slam, and then of course Fake Out being, you know, one of the main things on the Assault Vest sets here, right? In terms of the way the spreads would change for this, I like running down to about 110 here. I still stayed around that 84 HP. I just like hitting that round number of 240. Running this up to like 156 is like solid, and then kind of just pumping the rest into defense. That's honestly not too bad. If you also want it as well, I do think hitting that, is that the bump there actually? I think it's like 1 more point, right? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, hitting that bump number there is like also okay, and then you can kind of just like drop the HP down just a little bit here. Hit that there, and then hit that there. And that is also pretty damn solid. And then the Booster Energy set as well. I guess Booster set, I mean, that's basically what we just like touched on before, right? I think like if you're going Booster, you probably still got like Swords Dance plus Detect, and then Thunder Punch as well. But basically, you know, this mon's job is like, it is just a really, really bulky mon that's hard to deal with. Kind of just sits on the board. It's annoying, right? It can offer things like Fake Out. It could also offer things like, you know, slow pivoting with Volt Switch. And it also just hits really hard. Like, I do think this mon, unironically, is actually pretty damn solid into Incin. I do really think that the Clear Amulet set versus Incin is actually like really, really good. Because like, again, if you're running like pretty, you know, offensive Clear Amulet even, you're gonna do a lot of damage. You can also like slap things like Close Combat on this one. I think that's like one major thing a lot of people forget, because everyone's so used to Iron Hands being just like really bulky, drain punching up and just staying alive. You can slap CC on this and you go from a 75 base power attack to 120, and then all of a sudden like you're just one-shotting Incins, right? Like if you're like Clear Amulet plus like plus CC, like Incins aren't living that, they're just dead, right? And then you can also run it like a bit faster, because like there are people who ran like fast Iron Hands, right? You should run that down to like 156, and then like drop that down to like, yeah, you probably don't want to drop that down, let's be honest. But yeah, you like run this a bit faster, because I think people were running around that, like, was it around, I want to say like that 186 speed tier, something like that. You probably just like drop a bit off these two as well, and just like invest in SPDF, because the SPDF investment honestly is the most important thing on this one. But yeah, something like that is also like pretty damn good. But yeah, I guess, guys, that's basically it for the 10 mods I kind of wanted to touch on here today. I guess let me know down below what you think. Obviously, these are some of the best mods in the format. I really hope I didn't, I guess, lead people in the wrong direction when I was talking about these mods. This wasn't really a video, I guess, touching on the, I guess, like cool techs or anything, or like, you know, new fancy stuff. This is just the glue, right? These are the mods that are just super consistent. You can slap them on almost any team and they're gonna get you results, right? And that's kind of what I wanted to touch on today, right? You got a lot of support options, you know, you've also got some offensive options, you know, like there are other mods as well that might be, you know, really good glue in this format. Things like, you know, Annihilate, for example, I think has a lot of potential, especially with Incin, you know, on the rise. So I guess, yeah, I just keep an open mind. We're obviously still super early in the format. But yeah, guys, of course, let me know what you think down below. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.